Most of the neighbors on our street are friendly. We look out for each other, we text, chat, and say hello when we see one another. It is a sweet feeling of community. In the past, there has only been one household that was not interested in being friendly with any of us. An elderly woman in her mid-70s. We will call her Maud. And her son, mid-50s. We will call him Don. My partner and I would attempt to wave and say hello, only to be met with these cold stares. Once my dog managed to slip out of his collar and run through their yard while Maud was out getting the mail. The glare I received from her while I was trying to catch my dog left me with a feeling so hard to shake. You know that unexpected gut punch feeling when you become the object of a stranger's misery and hatred? Anyways, we learned quickly to stay out of her way. We barely ever saw Dawn, and the blinds were always closed tight. They rarely left the house, and no one ever visited. I last saw either of them at the beginning of August of 2021. Dawn was getting the mail while wearing blue latex gloves. I thought it was weird. In early October, one of our neighbors had reached out to see if we had seen Maud or Dawn recently. We had not. Suddenly, we were all too aware that their grass was over 3 feet tall and the mailbox was so full that it could not close anymore and papers were spilling out into the street. Obviously, a welfare check was called. The neighbor who had put herself in charge of directly communicating with the police called shortly after the check and told us to sit down. Maud and Dawn were both dead and had been dead for 6 to 8 weeks. It appeared to be a murder-suicide. The assumption being that he killed her. I paced the rest of the day in front of my living room windows, watching the crime scene van roll up. The officers in and out of the front door, taking breaks to somberly chat in the front yard. And then after a few hours, out came the body bags. The smell was something I had never experienced before and will never forget. The following weeks, I thought of how many times I had walked by that house with my son and dog, while 2 bodies had been sitting there rotting. I stayed up for hours a few nights trying to just find out anything I could. Nothing. No news stories, no crime reports, literally nothing. So I dug into Maud's history. All I could find was that she had been buried in the field north of town, dedicated to the unclaimed. I kept a close watch on the house and researched the legal proceedings that it would go through since there was no kin. Looking at that house has always felt cold and sad before, but now it felt dark too, haunted. I became obsessed with Maud's story with no way of getting answers. Her house just staring back at me blankly every single day. Back in the spring, my young son and I were out catching fireflies. We would stand still, waiting for one to blink and then run in that direction. It took us up and down the street multiple times. I know this is such a small, silly detail, but that night I stared into Maud's yard for minutes at a time, waiting to see a firefly, and I swear not a single firefly ever blinked over there. I became so bothered by it that I stared longer, sure that if I just stared long enough I would see one. But nothing. Complete stillness and darkness. I told my husband that I hoped someone would buy the property and knock the house down. No one had any business living there now. Today, around a year after they died, the doors were open and people I had not seen before were in and out, carrying bag after bag of what looked like junk. I texted a neighbor and asked for her intel, and he said in the house and all of its belongings had been collectively sold and then bought at an auction 2 weeks ago. These were the new owners, probably getting ready to flip the house. I typically do not shove myself into situations, but I had just spent way too much time thinking about Maud, wondering who she was, why she was so angry, imagining what strange life her and her son had been living, and what their last moments were like. I knew I would regret it forever if I did not ask them what it was like inside. So I did, and they invited me in. One step into the front door, and more puzzle pieces fell into place. This was a hoarder home. There was barely anywhere to put my feet. Stacks on stacks of old fine china, pots and pans, vintage books and records, knickknacks, and countless boxes filled with God knows what from the floor to the ceiling. The woman who had let me inside said, The mattress where it happened is still here. Do you want to see it?" Slightly afraid that she would think I was completely demented, but far more curious, I said, of course I wanted to see it. She led me to the bedroom through piles of leaning stacks of junk into a cramped small bedroom of a twin-size bed and pulled the blanket back. If you have seen what decomposition stains look like, then you can imagine what I saw. After processing, I asked, "So this is where Maud's body was found?" "I think they were both in here. I'm trying to piece it all together. I haven't even started in the other corner bedroom, but I'm hoping it'll give me some answers. I'll be here organizing and sorting over the next few days. You're welcome to join me if you'd like." I told her that I would love nothing more, so after all these months, I am excited to have a chance to get some answers to everything I have been wondering, to get a sense of who Maud was, to possibly find a way to honor what seems to have been a very sad life, to maybe get some clues into why her son murdered her. Her son, who I found out shortly after seeing the house, was a deeply troubled sex offender charged by the FBI for child pornography and soliciting a minor in 2014, and to hopefully do all of this without any bad energy attaching itself to me. I do keep wondering, though, why, if this was a murder-suicide, did the police not do a deeper investigation? Is it because there was no kin to care? Back when I was in my early to mid-teens, around 2007 to 2008, me and a bunch of friends would regularly hang out at an old abandoned school. A very small school with only 8 classrooms, a teacher's room, a cafeteria, 2 bedrooms, and one room we had no idea what it was since it was always locked. I will get back to that later. This school had not been able to keep up with the modernization of our town in the 80s and the large number of newcomers that followed with it, and as such, it quickly closed down in favor of new schools and buildings by the end of the 80s. Most of the place was boarded up completely, but you could enter in through one of the windows, and that was in one of the classrooms where the board had been ripped down. Our routine was always the same. Whoever of us got to the school first would go down to the building and then go through the different rooms to make sure everything was empty and safe, as the building had earlier been known as a local spot for drug addicts, and to use needles and such were a common sight for us by this point. So this one day, me and my friend were the first to get to the school, and as per usual, we take a walk down the building. Upon entering and stepping out from the classroom and into the hallway, we immediately see a large man. I remember him as quite huge, but that might possibly be how he appeared to us kids. My friend lets out this huge scream, and the man does not appear to be shocked or scared and does not seem to even react to us. But he turns to look at us and then asks if we have seen our friend, using his name specifically. We tell the guy, though, we have not seen anyone and we only just got here, to which he sighs and shrugs and then pushes past us to leave the same way we just entered. Now our friend has an unusual name, so the chances that this guy was just looking for another random person who happened to have the same name were pretty low. None of us have ever seen this guy before, and I happen to know most of my friend's family as well. When we described what the guy looked like to our friend, he did not seem to know who the guy could have been either, and for the next few months we were too scared to go back. When we did return about 3 or 4 months later, it was in the middle of summer vacation, and we thought it would be fun to climb up onto the roof of the building and sunbathe. Upon climbing it, we found the roof to be rather weak and close to caving in, but something made us take the risk and dare to venture out onto the roof after all. A hole in the roof, which we figured would have been directly above the room we had never been in. The hole in the roof was only about the size of a football, and one of my friends came up with the idea to lower her arm down into the hole and film the room using her phone so we could all see what the room looked like. She put her arm down and she started filming. She suddenly lets out a blood-curdling scream and immediately retracts her arm, but her phone is no longer to be seen. She was certain that something had hooked it from her hand, and we all looked down the hole, and we could see the phone lying on the floor. We climbed down from the roof and entered the building, now intent on doing whatever it would take to get into that room so our friend would not have to go home without a phone and have to explain what happened. About 30 minutes later, we finally managed to put a hole in the door and then put our hands inside, and when we tried to use a door handle on the inside, the door opened without any trouble. We stepped inside and we all stared in silence. To this day, I have no idea what this room was doing in a school building, and I sincerely hope it was never used for what it looked like it was intended for. The room was about 4 by 4 meters, and the floor and walls were all solid concrete. In the left corner of the room for where we entered were 2 metal bowls sitting on the floor, and at the back of the room were 5 chains dangling from the walls. 4 with equal-sized cuffs and 1 large one that looked like it would fit around a neck. Needless to say, we swiftly picked up our friend's phone and immediately left the place. However, the room had us both scared but also slightly intrigued, so after some talk back and forth that same night, we decided to go back to look at it again the following day. When we returned the next day, we found that the door had been locked once again, and someone had covered the hole we made in the door with a large wooden board and nailed over it. Once again, we immediately left, and after that visit, we never returned. I have no idea what we stumbled upon that day, but I am certain my days of hanging out in a place. I have no idea what we stumbled upon that day, but I am certain my days hanging out at this place is what sparked my interest in abandoned places. Today, I am an experienced member of the Urbex community and have had much more sinister experiences with places like this that I might share another time. Since taking up Urbex, it has always been my dream to go back to that school and check if that room was still there, but unfortunately that place no longer exists, and the area there is now home to a thrift store. I use a dating site to hopefully find a decent person to go out with and try to make connections. This dating site sadly has a lot of duds and very few decent folk available on there. However, I remained optimistic and kept going back to check messages. I received a message from a normal-looking guy who seemed to have a lot of good things going for him. After a bit of talking, I felt really comfortable giving him my personal number, something I rarely ever do. We talked on the phone and found we had many things in common. Both of us were nerdy and had some form of collection of nerdy things. At that point, I really wanted to meet him in person. So we set up a day to go out for brunch at a local place. He told me he was excited to meet me, and I told him I was excited too. On the day of the date, we had our lovely brunch and talked about various things. He was an extremely tall guy and built like an ox. I was almost a little intimidated, but I do like tall guys, so that did not bother me much. After some time talking, he got a text from his mom asking him where he was and that she needed him to come help her with his dad. He told me after the conversation with his mom that his dad was not doing well and was basically in hospice care at home. I gave my condolences and said it was fine to cut the date short so he could go take care of his dad. I even told him I would like to see him again sometime soon when he was able to. He felt the same way about it. As we left the restaurant and headed for my car, we ended up stopping for a short time and conversed just a little longer. Then all of a sudden, he asked me if I wanted to feel him. I was taken aback by what he said and asked him what he meant. It was so out of nowhere that I did not think he meant his groin. I looked around nervously at the parking lot, looking to see if anyone nearby that I could flag down for help. Sadly, there was no one, and so my attention turned back to him, afraid of what he might do, and him waiting there expectantly. I shakily reached my hand out and tried to aim not directly upon his crotch. Then I announced, "Oh yeah, sure, can feel it," laughed nervously and lied. But then he forcefully grabbed my hand and brought it to his groin. Thankfully, I still did not feel it, as I was still kind of aimed offset. He asked me if I felt it now, and I lied once again and said yes. I was so afraid and was at a loss for words. He towered over me like a skyscraper. If he wanted to, he could have easily lifted me up, put a hand over my mouth and showed me into his car without breaking a sweat. To cut the awkward silence, I said, "Well, I had better go now." He said goodbye and left to go to his car, and I torpedoed into my own car and locked the door as soon as I sat down. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel and headed home. glancing into my rearview mirror to make sure he was not following me. When I got home, I washed my hands thoroughly, even though I had not actually touched him. Just the thought of it made me sick, and washing my hands made me feel at least slightly better. After that day, I never texted him back or answered his phone calls. Now, here is where things got more scary. I knew what his name was, and he had mentioned what his dad's name was, but on my own I discovered what his middle and last name happened to be. I then used his full name to look up any sort of criminal report or information I could obtain about him. I needed to know everything, especially if he was a criminal. First thing I saw was his full name, on an article about a woman whose body was found on the side of a highway in a sleeping bag, or a black bag. As I read the article, I noticed certain names being used. First, his name, it matched. Then later in the article, after reading about what he had done to the woman, there was a portion where the journalist spoke about his parents. His dad's nickname came up, the same name he told me on the date. To seal the deal that this was the same guy, the dates and his age matched up exactly. He had just gone to prison for 10 years or less. When he got on the dating site and talked to me, he must have gotten out of prison only about a month before. It all hit me like a ton of bricks at once. I had just gone on a date with a man who killed a woman, and he never told me. Had I known beforehand, I never even would have gone out on a date with him. I would have never given him my personal number. Since then, I have hoped he has not searched for my address. Suffice it to say, I rested uneasy for months after discovering his crime. This happened during my freshman year of college. I was taking a theater appreciation class, and we had to attend some of the plays the theater department put on. Normally I went with friends, but for this one I had to go alone, since my friends went to another event. The play started at 6:30, so I set out on the front short sidewalk for about 10 minutes waiting for the play. When I arrived, I saw a man standing by the entrance. Out of habit, I smiled at him. I tend to do that with strangers. He smiled back, but there was something about him that made me feel uneasy. He got in line right behind me, and while we waited, I overheard him muttering to himself about his car and where it was parked. I was not really paying attention until I heard him say, "Where are you sitting?" I thought he was talking to someone else, so I did not respond. Once my ticket was scanned, I went in and found my seat, but then to my surprise, the same man sat down right next to me. I heard him mumble, "I can't believe it, right next to me?" His tone sent a chill through me, but I tried to ignore it. He was probably in his early 30s, and soon enough he turned to me and started asking questions. Too many questions. "Do you come to these plays often?" he asked. I told him no. He quickly launched into how he was a regular and loved them, even mentioning that his girlfriend was in the play that night. I was still creeped out, but I felt a twinge of guilt for judging him so quickly. Maybe he was just being friendly. But then something strange happened. Everything I said, he had the same interests, the same experiences. It was unsettling. When he asked what kind of music I liked, I decided to mention Regina Spektor, a lesser-known artist, thinking he would not know her. His response was, "Oh, I love Regina Spektor. She's amazing. I listen to her all the time." It was too much. He was agreeing with everything I said, and the more he did, the more uncomfortable I felt. Right before the play started, a woman around his age sat on my other side. The moment she sat down, he went quiet. Then oddly, the woman struck up the same kind of small talk with me. She even asked similar questions, almost if they had compared notes. As she talked, she touched my arm a few times in this weird way, this too familiar way, just like the man had done earlier. I felt trapped between them. Thankfully, the play started and everyone went silent, but I could still feel their eyes on me, watching me, the whole time. At intermission, the man offered to get me something from the concessions. I declined, but he kept insisting. "I'll surprise you," he said, his tone a little too eager. I kept saying no, but he seemed frustrated and eventually got up to leave. As soon as he was gone, the woman picked up right where he left off, asking me about singing because she thought my voice sounded pretty. I told her I used to sing in high school but had stopped. Again, she touched my arm while she talked, more than once, and it made my skin crawl. When the man returned, he brought back some M&Ms and Milk Duds, both of which looked like they had already been opened. He offered me the Milk Duds and I declined. He did not eat them either, just placed them on the floor, like he was not sure what to do next. Then he started asking more personal questions about my family and whether I came to college alone. I lied, telling him I lived with my brother in an apartment far from where I actually stayed. That is when he leaned in and told me he was an amateur music producer and that I had a great voice. I should come by his place sometime to record. He just happened to live near where I said I lived. It was all too much, and the tension in my chest would not go away. Then his phone buzzed. He quickly looked at it and tried to hide the screen, but I saw the message. "She's really cute. Do you think she'll work?" My heart was racing. I wanted to bolt right then and there, but I did not know what to do. The woman beside me suddenly touched my arm again and whispered that she was going to the bathroom. Suggested I come with her. At first, I thought maybe she had noticed this man's odd behavior and was trying to help. Then I saw her phone light up in her lap with a message that said, "Yes." It was from an unsaved number. I felt my stomach drop. She never went to the bathroom. We all just sat there as the second half of the play dragged on. Tension thick in the air. Both of them kept glancing at me and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. The moment the play ended, I got up and climbed over the woman, making my way to the exit as fast as possible. Once outside, I darted into the bathroom trying to collect myself. When I finally came out, I saw the man and woman standing in the corner of the foyer having what looked like a heated whispering argument. When the woman spotted me, she immediately stopped talking and the man began walking towards me. "I can give you a ride to your apartment," he offered. I told him no and that my brother was picking me up. Just then, one of my classmates ran over, calling out my name. The man backed off when he saw my friend. We left together, and as we walked out, I heard him call behind me, "Hope to see you again." I did not look back. I just ran, staying on the phone with my mom the whole way home. Now I cannot stop wondering, why did they act like they did not know each other when they clearly did? Why did they both ask me the same creepy questions, touching my arm like they were trying to establish some weird familiarity? And what was with the texts? Were they communicating with each other about me the whole time? Where did that candy come from? Why was it already opened? Why did he not eat it? And why did they keep trying to separate me, asking if I wanted to go to the bathroom or ride with them? Am I paranoid, or was this something seriously wrong? I had help with making the story clearer, but the experience is entirely accurate and happened to me. Also, a girl had been abducted, trafficked, and murdered in my college town a year or two before I was there. The whole situation makes me incredibly uneasy. That's all we got tonight, guys. I really appreciate you being here. These stories I typically find on Reddit or you guys send them to me. So if you have anything that's similar or just as equally crazy, drop yes in the comments or shoot me a message. I have my email link in my description, and I'd love to tell your story too, especially if you like the way I tell them. Thanks, guys. Thanks again, and peace.